Welcome back, Star Wars fans, where we do deep dives into the characters, lore, and just about everything else in Star Wars that we can think of. And if you have a topic in the galaxy far, far away you'd like me to talk about or cover, leave it in the comments. And if you see a comment you like, give that comment a thumbs up and I'll make a video on the topic with the most likes. I'm here for you. Today we're diving deep into one of the most complex and morally gray decisions in the Andor series, Mon Mothma's willingness to betroth her daughter Leida to the son of the infamous criminal Davos Sculdun. This decision isn't just about politics or a cultural nod to Chandrilla's ancient traditions. It's about a woman torn between her responsibilities to the rebellion, her family, and her beliefs. But what led Mon Mothma, one of the strongest moral figures in the rebellion, to even consider such a move? What does it say about her relationship with her daughter and her husband? And how does it reveal the cracks in her own ideals? Yeah, I can't seem to stay away from the Andor series for long, but I do promise I have other Star Wars material in the works. But before I go on, I have some huge news for this channel. Many of you already know, but just to reiterate, I will be changing the name of the channel to The Outer Rim in the coming days. I will explain more about this at the end of this video, the why. But if you're new here and enjoy the Star Wars content that I do create, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to turn notifications on to stay up to date on all my Star Wars analysis and deep dives. Now, moving on. Let's dig deep into the motives behind Mon Mothma, her husband Perrin Firtha, and their daughter Leida in this breakdown. Mon Mothma is known across the Star Wars universe as a symbol of resistance, the very heart of the rebellion. She's a senator who stood up to the Empire, and eventually she became the leader of the New Republic. But as we see in Andor, her political life isn't the only thing crumbling under the weight of the rebellion. Her personal life is also fracturing. Mon Mothma was never a fan of the old Chandrillan ways, particularly the archaic and restrictive customs of arranged marriages. Chandrilla's old traditions were deeply embedded in the idea of forming alliances, often at the expense of personal freedom, especially for women. Mon Mothma rejected those values, choosing instead to focus on a life of service to the greater good of the galaxy. Yet, in her home, those very customs still hold sway, especially with her daughter Leida. Leida, ironically, embraces the traditional customs of Chandrilla. She's drawn to the rituals and values of their culture, despite Mon Mothma's disapproval. The generational divide between mother and daughter becomes painfully clear. For Leida, Chandrillan traditions offer a sense of identity and structure in a time of galactic chaos. But for Mon Mothma, these traditions represent everything she's worked to escape: control, oppression, and the sacrifice of personal autonomy. At the heart of Mon Mothma's dilemma is this contrast. She's fighting for freedom on a galactic scale, but inside her own home, she faces a different kind of battle, one rooted in culture, family, expectations, and ultimately rebellion against her own beliefs. To fully understand Mon Mothma's decision, we need to look at her desperate financial situation. Mon Mothma's role in funding the early days of the rebellion placed her in a precarious position. Moving large sums of money without attracting the Empire's attention was already a massive risk. And the moment the Empire caught a whiff of these financial discrepancies, everything would come crashing down. Davos Sculdun, a known criminal, offers a solution, an injection of money that could help her rebellious activities stay hidden and keep the Empire's eyes away from her accounts. But this offer doesn't come without strings attached. Davos isn't interested in money alone. He's after much more value: an alliance with one of Chandrilla's most prominent families. His price? An arranged marriage between his son and Leida. This proposition creates the perfect storm for Mon Mothma. On one hand, agreeing to Davos' proposal would save her from financial ruin and keep her rebellious activities secret from the Empire, thus ultimately saving her life and her family's. On the other hand, it would mean using her daughter as a bargaining chip in an arrangement that mirrors everything she despises about her homeworld's traditions. But in this moment, Mon Mothma isn't just fighting for her ideals, she's fighting for the survival of the rebellion. Her sense of duty compels her to consider the unthinkable, betrothing her daughter to a criminal's son to secure the financial means to keep the rebellion alive and her family. Leda's character in Andor offers a fascinating contrast to her mother. While Mon Mothma has rejected the old ways of Chandrila, Leda seems to cling to them, almost as an act of rebellion against her mother. Leda's embrace of traditional Chandrilan customs isn't just about cultural pride, it's about asserting her own identity in opposition to her mother's beliefs. For Leda, following these old customs may feel like a way of gaining control in a family where she otherwise feels alienated. She watches her mother balance her political duties with the Imperial Senate, leaving little time for her family. To Leda, embracing the old ways could be a form of rebellion against the woman who is rebelling against the Empire. It's ironic, but within their family dynamic, Mon Mothma and Leda are both rebels in their own right, just on opposite sides of the same ideological conflict within the family. Now let's talk about Perrin Firtha, Mon Mothma's husband. Perrin is one of the most intriguing characters in Mon Mothma's life. His relationship with his wife is strained and his loyalties are constantly in question. He's frequently seen aligning himself with individuals who oppose Mon Mothma's political stance, and in many ways he embodies the very privilege and complacency that Mon Mothma is fighting against. It's clear that Perrin enjoys the perks of being married to someone as powerful as Mon Mothma. He's not particularly engaged in the galaxy's larger political struggles, but he's more than happy to enjoy the benefits that come with his wife's status. This is, of course, put him at odds with Mon Mothma's more serious, duty-bound personality. He doesn't seem to understand or perhaps care about the rebellion or the dangers Mon Mothma faces. Probably doesn't even know about it. Perrin also has a close bond with Leda, and it's this relationship that further alienates Mon Mothma. Perrin seems to support Leda's adherence to the old Chandrilan ways, perhaps as a way of undermining Mon Mothma's authority in the household. His encouragement of Leda's customs could be seen as a subtle form of rebellion against Mon Mothma, an attempt to pull their daughter away from Mon Mothma's influence and back toward the old ways of Chandrila and ultimately on Perrin's own side. By aligning himself with Leda's values, Perrin is not only creating a rift in the family, but also positioning himself as a potential scapegoat in the betrothal deal. Mon Mothma, already caught between her duties to the rebellion and her family, recognizes this. She's aware that if the deal with Davo goes public, Perrin's complicity could shield her from the worst of the fallout. In essence, she's willing to use him as a sacrificial lamb to protect both herself and the rebellion, and also her family. When Davos Sculdun proposes the marriage arrangement, Mon Mothma's back is against a wall. The Empire's surveillance is tightening, and her financial situation is precarious. Davos' offer, however distasteful, provides a way out, a way to save her role in the rebellion without alerting the Empire to her activities. But agreeing to this deal would also be a betrayal of everything she's fought for. Mon Mothma has always stood for freedom and autonomy, and this marriage arrangement flies in the face of those ideals. It's a calculated move, one that Mon Mothma hopes will calm Leda's rebellious spirit by giving her what she wants, an old Chandrilan custom, and teach her a harsh lesson about the dangers of alliances. But Mon Mothma has a backup plan. In case the deal with Davos Sculdun doesn't work, she has taken Perrin's crux and exploited it, his gambling habits of the past. By framing her husband as the reason for the missing money, she has created a cushion between herself and the prying eyes of the Empire, and this plan seems to be working. Perrin won't get into any real trouble with the Empire for gambling, but Mon Mothma is destined to get some political backlash from it. Not that that is of any importance. Her sway in the Imperial Senate is waning. In essence, Mon Mothma is playing a long game. She hopes that by giving Leto what she thinks she wants, her daughter will eventually realize the folly of adhering to such outdated customs. At the same time, Mon Mothma is ensuring the survival of the rebellion and her family by securing the financial resources needed to continue her fight against the Empire. And if that doesn't work, she has that backup plan. This decision raises a larger question. What ultimately happened to Mon Mothma's family? In later Star Wars canon, we don't see Leto or Perrin, which leaves us to wonder what fate befell them after Mon Mothma was exiled. Did Mon Mothma's decision to betroth her daughter to Davos Sculdun's son lead to the complete dissolution of her family? Did Perrin's continued alignment with her adversaries finally drive them apart? Or did Mon Mothma's growing role in the rebellion force her to abandon her family for the greater good of the galaxy? These are questions that Andor leaves unanswered for now, but they provide a fascinating glimpse into the personal sacrifices Mon Mothma made in the name of freedom. And what point did she decide that the rebellion was more important than her family? And how did her willingness to use her daughter as a pawn in a political game affect her relationship with Leto in the long run? In the end, Mon Mothma's decision to betroth her daughter to a criminal's son wasn't just about survival, it was about navigating the complex moral landscape of war, family, and rebellion. It's a choice that will undoubtedly haunt her for the rest of her life, even as she continues to fight for the galaxy's freedom. So, what do you think happened to Mon Mothma's family after she became exiled? Was this decision the final breaking point, or did her relationship with Perrin and Leto deteriorate slowly over time? Could there have been a reconciliation, or were the scars of this choice too deep and personal to heal? Well, Andor doesn't shy away from adult themes, and I'd say we're going to see quite a bit in Andor Season 2, at least something on it. Mon Mothma's story is one of constant sacrifice. While she's often celebrated for her leadership and unwavering commitment to the rebellion, her personal sacrifices go far beyond what many of us realize. The cost of freedom in her world didn't just come with political risks. It came with the price of her own family's happiness and unity. The tragedy of her situation is that in fighting for the freedom of others, she was forced to betray her own values and use her family as pawns in a political game that had no real winners. But when we see Mon Mothma for the first time in Return of the Jedi in 1983, we don't think of the things that she had to do to get to that position. We just see the figure, and that's it. Mon Mothma's willingness to use Perrin as a scapegoat, an absentee father figure in Leta's life who had little interest in the larger political issues, reveals the deep divide in their marriage. Perrin may not have been a direct threat to Mon Mothma's work in the rebellion, but his constant undermining of her efforts, intentional or not, painted him as an antagonist in her personal battle for survival. In aligning with adversaries favoring traditional customs that clashed with Mon Mothma's modern ideals and feeding into Leta's interest in the old ways, Perrin indirectly pushed Mon Mothma into an impossible position. Not to mention you can't trust the guy. She even says that. For Mon Mothma, Perrin's complicity and Leta's attachment to the old Chandrillan ways was more than just a family disagreement. It was a potential threat to everything she was trying to build within the rebellion. If Leta followed the path Perrin encouraged, Mon Mothma might have lost control of her family's future entirely. That's why Davos Sculdun's offer, vile as it was, became so tempting. It provided a way for Mon Mothma to exert control over a situation that was slipping out of her grasp. Not to mention, if Mon Mothma was ever discovered for her rebellious activities, this might also help protect Leto, being in a criminal organization family. But in doing so, Mon Mothma had to face an even darker truth. To save the galaxy, she might have to sacrifice her own family. The notion of sacrificing everything took on a personal meaning for her, much like it did for other key figures in the rebellion and Andor. For Cassian Andor, it was his father figure and his ideals. For Luthen Rael, it was his anonymity and moral high ground. For Mon Mothma, it was her family and her moral compass. For figures like Kino Loy, it was his freedom altogether. It's easy to celebrate Mon Mothma as a political hero, but this decision to arrange a marriage for her daughter for political gain shows that even she had to make choices that were far from black and white. The rebellion wasn't just about grand acts of heroism, it was about making tough, ugly choices in the shadows, with no guarantees of victory or even survival. The role of Perrin Further cannot be understated in this scenario. His indifference to Mon Mothma's larger struggle for freedom wasn't just a character flaw, and it's probably an oversight. It was a calculated move, whether he was conscious of it or not. Perrin enjoyed the lifestyle that came with being a prominent Chandrillan family in the Imperial Senate, but he lacked the ideological passion or drive to care about the greater conflict in the galaxy. Throughout Andor, Perrin's alignment with Mon Mothma's political adversaries comes across as deliberate. It's almost as if he enjoys needling her, creating friction in their marriage and in her life. Perrin, in many ways, represents the old guard of Chandrila, those who would prefer to keep their heads down and maintain the status quo rather than engage in the rebellion. He is the embodiment of complacency, and his constant backing of Leeta's desire to embrace Chandrillan traditions and against her mother shows that his loyalty lies more with preserving their privileged status than with supporting Mon Mothma's ideals. This constant undermining of Mon Mothma's values forced her into an emotional corner. In Perrin, she saw someone willing to use her own daughter to weaken her resolve. That's why she was willing to let Perrin become the scapegoat in the gambling ordeal and in possibly Davos Gulden's deal. If things went south, Perrin's complacency and complicity in Leeta's interests could shield Mon Mothma from the political fallout. It's not that she wanted to hurt Perrin, but the stakes were too high for her to protect everyone. In war, sacrifices must be made, and Mon Mothma knew Perrin was more expendable than the cause she was fighting for, especially since the man was against her at every stop. At the heart of this entire conflict lies Leeta, Mon Mothma's daughter, who represents the next generation of Chandrillans. Leeta's embrace of Chandrillan custom feels like an act of rebellion against her mother's rejection of tradition. In her mind, these customs are a way of asserting her identity, finding security in an unstable galaxy. What Mon Mothma wants for her daughter, freedom, individuality, and autonomy, conflicts directly with what Leeta wants for herself. And not to mention, just everything around Mon Mothma seems to be falling apart. There's the money missing from her accounts. There's her family, with Perrin and Leeta being against her at every turn they can. And then there's Luthen Rael, who seems to be going on his own direction instead of following the original plan that was set in place. Everything's coming apart, and she has to do something about it. Everything's unraveling, she's losing control, and for someone with as high a stature as Mon Mothma, this will not fly. She needs to be part of this, and it needs to be taken care of. The arrangement with Davos Gulden's son is Mon Mothma's attempt to both placate Leeta and subtly teach her a lesson. By giving Leeta what she wants, an arranged marriage that fits with Chandrillan customs, Mon Mothma hopes to show her daughter the dangers of adhering too rigidly to tradition. It's a lesson wrapped in a sacrifice. Mon Mothma is willing to compromise her own values in order to help her daughter see the bigger picture. It's a gamble, one that could either save or doom Leeta. In essence, Mon Mothma is using the arranged marriage as a mirror for Leeta, showing her that the customs she cherishes are not without consequences. Mon Mothma hopes that by agreeing to this marriage, Leeta will eventually come to realize the limitations and pitfalls of adhering to the old ways. It's a painful lesson, one that Mon Mothma is all too familiar with, having spent her entire life rejecting those very customs. So, what ultimately happened to Mon Mothma's family as she rose in prominence with the rebellion and eventually the New Republic? Perrin and Leeta seemingly faded into the background of Star Wars lore, not even mentioned in the Bloodlines novel. Their absence raises a host of questions. Did Mon Mothma's decision to arrange Leeta's marriage alienate her from her family entirely? Did parents' complacency and alignment with her political enemies finally drive them apart? Or, the final solution to it, did the Empire take care of the family themselves in a bad way? The exile that Mon Mothma faced after becoming a key figure in the rebellion was not just a physical separation from the Empire. It was a personal exile from her own family. Her willingness to sacrifice her family's unity for the greater good of the galaxy speaks to the enormous weight she carried as a leader of the rebellion. In the end, Mon Mothma had to choose between the ideals she fought for and the family she loved. And the cost of that choice may have been the dissolution of her family. It's a somber reminder that the heroes of the rebellion didn't just face external threats from the Empire. They faced internal struggles, personal sacrifices, and moral compromises that shaped the course of their lives. Mon Mothma's decision to arrange her daughter's marriage to a criminal son is one of the clearest examples of this, an act of desperation that speaks to the impossible choices that define the rebellion. So, what I want from you guys is to mention in the comments down below what you think happened to Mon Mothma's family. I'd love to hear about it. And what do you think will happen in Andor Season 2? Do you think this will be resolved, or do you think they'll leave it on a cliffhanger? I personally think it'll be resolved. Tony Gilroy's pretty good about that stuff. But now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, the reason why I'm changing the name to the Outer Rim. And it has nothing to do with any kind of drama. Okay, yeah, it does. I want to stay out of the drama that surrounds just about everything in our world right now. I don't want any part of it. I don't want to be involved in it. And having the name Fanatic kind of draws the people in that want to engage in that sort of thing. And I don't want that. I'm not here for clicks and views from just about everybody. I'm here for the people who love Star Wars and want to learn more about Star Wars. So I think the Outer Rim encompasses that without putting a negative spin on what I do here, especially since I've changed the format and way I do my videos. This is a place where we enjoy Star Wars, and I want it to continue to be that way. Anyways, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment down below, share the video with some friends, some gerbils, a Komodo dragon, I don't care. Just share it and leave a comment. Thank you all for watching. Until the next time, this is Gerald, a Star Wars fanatic, signing off. Wishing you all great health, happiness, and peace. And remember, may the Force be with you always.